So in early 2001, we had one of the wildest acting races ever. Remember that year in Best Supporting Actress? Someone new was winning at every major televised ceremony, from the Golden Globes to the Oscars. It was chaos. We had no idea who was going to win in that category at the 73rd Academy Awards. It really could have been anyone. The only person in the category that night who had still not won anything big yet was Marcia Gay Harden for Pollock. In a way, she made the least sense to win since the others had taken a major precursor prize. But of course, the Oscar that night did go to Marcia Gay Harden in a stunner. A very small indie movie that by the end of 2000, very few people had even seen. But Pollock, directed by Ed Harris, who was also nominated that night in Best Actor, that film gained in strength all the way to Oscars night, and Marcia Gay Harden took Best Supporting Actress. And again, that was one of the most chaotic acting races we have ever seen. I'm going to finally make a video about Best Supporting Actress 2000 in a few weeks, so keep an eye out for that. But before we get to that Oscar race retrospective, I have another retrospective for you today about another supporting acting race around that time, just 2 years earlier, 1998. And you might not remember this, Best Supporting Actor for that year was just as chaotic as Best Supporting Actress 2 years later. In the same way, someone new was winning in Supporting Actor at every major televised ceremony, so that when we arrived to the 71st Academy Awards in Best Supporting Actor, there was no way really to tell who was going to be victorious. The suspense was real, and so when Kim Basinger, the previous year's winner for Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars, came out on stage, read the nominees, and then opened the envelope, I, for one, was holding my breath. Who was going to win?
James Coburn in Affliction.
It was indeed James Coburn who won that night for Affliction. Why did this happen? How did Coburn beat his very competitive other nominees in the category? And how has that Oscar victory stood the test of time? Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender. I do have another Oscar race retrospective for you today. We are going back to the end of the 90s, and Best Supporting Actor. We have some wonderful films to talk about today, some truly amazing Best Supporting Actor performances. I love all of these. And the way we're going to do it for this video is we're going to start at the Golden Globes and then slowly work our way to the Oscars and talk about the main reasons why James Coburn was ultimately victorious. So are you ready? Here is the totally crazy story of Best Supporting Actor 1998. So at the beginning of award season at the Golden Globes in January of 1999, there were a ton of great films competing like Saving Private Ryan and Shakespeare in Love, Elizabeth, The Thin Red Line, The Horse Whisperer by Robert Redford got into motion picture drama, and of course there was The Truman Show, one of my 5 favorite films of all time. I watch it if not once a year, once every other year. This film is extraordinary. It means so much to me as a lifelong Jim Carrey fan, as a fan of Peter Weir, the director. It's just such a magical movie. And I was so thrilled at the Golden Globes that year when Jim Carrey won Best Actor in a Motion Picture Drama. That was a moment.
It's going to be so hard to talk out of my ass after this.
I don't know about you, but I thought Jim Carrey was coming for his first Oscar nomination. Like, I was expecting that. And as we'll get to, right, it didn't happen.
And the Academy. No, I mean... I'm sorry, I was thinking of something else, and...
But as a huge fan of The Truman Show, I was also happy that night to see it win Best Original Score. It won score there. And it won Best Supporting Actor for Ed Harris, who is brilliant as Christoph, the mastermind behind The Truman Show.
Don't you ever feel guilty?
I have given Truman the chance to lead a normal life.
So at some point during the film's production, Dennis Hopper was let go of the role of Christoph. He originally was playing that character. He was fired, and then they had like just a few days, if I remember right. They had a few days to hire a different actor, and they got Ed Harris like on a Friday, Saturday, and by Monday, like he was playing the character. He had no time to prepare, but he went in there. He almost steals the show from Carrie. He is that good. He's not in the movie at all for about an hour, but boy, in the second half, does he leave a huge impression. His final scene with Carrie is an all-timer. That moment when he's taking phone calls and he talks to the love of Truman's life and everything he's done for Truman that he believes in his heart was the right thing for him, but she knows it was all wrong. Ed Harris turned out to be the right person for that role, and when he won the Golden Globe Award, I thought, holy shit, Ed Harris is finally going to win his Academy Award.
I just got through eating dinner, you know.
He, of course, had been nominated 3 years before for Apollo 13. I would say he was kind of in the running to win for that, but the prize at the Oscars that year, of course, in supporting actor, went to Kevin Spacey for The Usual Suspects. I do think Harris was probably in second place there. His movie was in Best Picture, Apollo 13. So here he is, 3 years later, another great performance. He wins the Globe. Can he win the Oscar? We shall see. Something that did not help Ed Harris is that he didn't win any other major precursor prize. He won the National Board of Review. Like, that was something, but that was about it. National Board of Review and the Golden Globe. Over the next few weeks, other people were winning big prizes in Best Supporting Actor. Now let's move to the Critics' Choice Awards, the fourth ceremony. They're pretty new at the end of the 90s. There haven't been very many years with the Critics' Choice Awards. So they're slowly coming onto the scene. Who do they give their prize in Best Supporting Actor? They go with an absolutely stellar choice, Billy Bob Thornton in A Simple Plan.
I don't care. I just want to feel it, you know. I just want to know what people do, you know. I don't care if it's because of the money.
This, to me, by far, I would say, is the best performance in the category that year. Billy Bob Thornton is a revelation in A Simple Plan. It's the best work I think he's ever done. I think it's his best performance, you know, in a career where he's done really great work in a variety of films in different genres. Some are big budget, some are low budget. Billy Bob Thornton, in a way, has done it all, but he's never been as good as he is in A Simple Plan, directed by Sam Raimi, co-starring Bill Paxton and Bridget Fonda. This is a masterpiece of a movie. I rewatched it again a few nights ago, was just completely immersed once again in the story where you really put yourself like in the main character's shoes. What if you found $4.5 million in a bag in a fallen plane in the middle of winter where like nobody knows about this plane or the money? Do you turn it in to the authorities or do you keep the money for yourselves? Of course, like if you know this film, they decide to keep the money, and then it's just one problem after another, a crisis piling on another crisis. Like everything they do just make things worse. People die. It's a tragedy. It's very serious. It's slow and dramatic and always compelling. And the best performance in the movie is Billy Bob Thornton as the awkward brother Jacob, who's never had a successful relationship with a girl, as he talks about in the movie. He just wants a simple life. He just wants to live in his parents' farmhouse, make it up, and turn it into some place where he can have beers with his brother and sister-in-law and just, you know, live the good life. But what these brothers end up doing to like keep hold of this money, it's not going to end well for either of them. And it's just such a gripping film from one moment to the next. It's kind of insane, actually, that Sam Raimi directed A Simple Plan. Like, you don't see any of the Evil Dead, all of the fast-paced insanity that came with most of his films up to that point. He really like quiets things down in A Simple Plan and lets the narrative unfold at the right pace. It is masterful filmmaking, and Billy Bob Thornton is so good, he had to get another Oscar nomination. He, of course, had just won in screenplay 2 years prior for Sling Blade. He also got into Best Actor. Could he win again, his first time ever in an acting category? He won at Critics' Choice, and he won a boatload of critics' prizes. I would say that year in Best Supporting Actor, Billy Bob Thornton in A Simple Plan was the big winner from the critics. But was that going to be enough? We were going to find out. Moving now to the Screen Actors Guild Awards. Was that prize going to Ed Harris for The Truman Show or Billy Bob Thornton for A Simple Plan? No, they went with Robert Duvall for A Civil Action.
What if I were to add 6 zeros onto that? That's right, that would be, what, $20 million.
This talky, intense courtroom drama starring John Travolta in the lead role as a lawyer who takes on 2 companies who were responsible for children developing leukemia because of the town's contaminated water supply. Robert Duvall plays the opposing force, the defense attorney who represents the companies who were accused of polluting the town's water. And it's another great performance from the amazing Robert Duvall. It's pretty subtle, but every time he is on screen, you can't look away. And in a truly impressive ensemble of actors. Like if you go back and watch A Civil Action from 1998, it's like one great actor after another. I was like, oh my God, even the last scene, the person who plays the judge in the very last moments is like a big star. I was like, whoa, they got everybody in this. You, of course, have John Travolta in the lead. This is the time in the 90s where he's like a huge movie star after Pulp Fiction, getting a second Oscar nomination. This is that like 6-7 year period where he is the face of basically every movie he appears in. He did not get a ton of Oscar buzz for A Civil Action and Best Actor. That was the same year as Primary Colors. That was a bit more of a flashy performance from him in that movie. So that was the film that was getting him more buzz. A Civil Action was more muted on that front. Really the only buzz for that film all season long was for Robert Duvall in Best Supporting Actor. He is definitely the standout of the film if I had to pick one. I'm not a big fan of A Civil Action. It bored me to tears when I saw it in theaters as a teenager, and I just watched it again for the second time ever. I was like, oh, I'm an adult now. I'm going to really like this film now. I'm more mature. But no, guys, I mean, it's pretty dull. I'm sad to say. I know some people really like that movie. I think it's very similar in many aspects to Erin Brockovich, which comes out just a little more than a year later. And Erin Brockovich is such a better film. More entertaining, more insightful, a much more memorable lead performance, of course. So I would go with Erin Brockovich, that's just me. A Civil Action, of course, has some great things about it, like the cinematography, which also got in at the Oscars for A Civil Action. Conrad L. Hall, who the next year would win for American Beauty, he does some really fine work in that. And Robert Duvall, after winning at SAG, you could argue maybe he was going to win the Oscar for this performance. He had just been nominated the year before in Best Actor for The Apostle. He didn't win for that. He hadn't won since the 80s. So enough time had passed, you could say, well, maybe they're going to give it to Duvall. But we weren't done yet, right? It still wasn't clear who was going to win the Oscar, because at BAFTA, they threw us for another loop. That prize in Best Supporting Actor did not go to Harris, or Thornton, or Duvall. They went with Geoffrey Rush for Shakespeare in Love.
The natural condition is one of insurmountable obstacles on the road to imminent disaster.
So what do we do?
Nothing.
So one of the most beloved films of 1998 was, of course, Shakespeare in Love, directed by John Madden. Many of the actors in that movie were being floated for potential nominations for wins. Best Actress, you had Gwyneth Paltrow. Best Supporting Actress, you had Judi Dench. Who was going to get into Best Supporting Actor for that film? At BAFTA, they nominated 2 people, Geoffrey Rush and Tom Wilkinson. And then they also nominated in Supporting Actor that year, Geoffrey Rush for Elizabeth. So they were pretty big on Geoffrey Rush that year. I mean, you could argue maybe he could have canceled himself out. Maybe they could have given it to Wilkinson or something. BAFTA does do some crazy things throughout the years. But no, they went with Rush for Shakespeare in Love. So his terrific and flashy performance as the debt-ridden owner of the Rose Theater in that movie, it seems like he could have won Best Supporting Actor, even though he had just won Best Actor 2 years before for Shine. Like, he just won for that, but he's also very memorable. He plays a very different kind of character in Shakespeare in Love. So if they were going to go all in on that movie, kind of like Everything Everywhere All at Once many years later, which won actress, supporting actress, and supporting actor, maybe Geoffrey Rush for Shakespeare in Love was also going to come along for the ride. So we get to the 71st Academy Awards, and Best Supporting Actor. In the category, we have Ed Harris for The Truman Show, and Billy Bob Thornton for A Simple Plan, and Robert Duvall for A Civil Action, and Geoffrey Rush for Shakespeare in Love. Any one of those men could have won. It wouldn't have been the shocker of the decade. Each one had a couple things going for them, and so it was possible that one of them could have taken it. So who was the fifth nominee, the last person to talk about in this video? It was the winner of the Academy Award, of course, James Coburn for Affliction.
All of you. What I've got for children. Jesus freaks and candy asses.
Coburn's performance as an alcoholic, abusive father to Nick Nolte's character, a total deadbeat that over many, many years does not really change in his ways. He just gets older and slower, but he's still the awful man he was much younger. Paul Schrader's Affliction is a gripping psychological drama from beginning to end, has similarities to A Simple Plan. Like, it's also about family dynamics and doing the wrong thing. It's also set during the winter, and it's slow and it's compelling. It's not quite as good as A Simple Plan. I wouldn't put them in the same category. I think A Simple Plan is a masterpiece. Affliction is very good, but absolutely the best thing about it is the James Coburn performance. Nick Nolte is also excellent in the film. He got an Oscar nomination for Best Actor, so well deserved. But the performance you come away from the movie thinking about is James Coburn's. This was a revelation from the actor. He had been around for decades, right? He was a legend. By the end of the 1990s, he had never been recognized really with any major award nominations or wins anywhere along the way. And what's so interesting about his win at the Oscars is that it's not like we were really set up to believe he could do it. He's not nominated at the Golden Globe Awards. He's not nominated at BAFTA. He's only nominated before the Oscars at SAG. He gets in there in supporting actor, and then he gets in at the Oscars. Affliction is only nominated for Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor. That is it. It's not even in screenplay. Affliction is not in a technical category, picture director, nothing else. So it wouldn't have been obvious on the night that James Coburn was winning. He had not won any major precursor prizes, unlike the other four in the category. Everybody else had won something. Harris at Golden Globes, Thornton at Critics' Choice, Duvall at SAG, and Rush at BAFTA. They had all won something. Coburn had nothing. So why did he win the Academy Award that night? Why did he beat out his very strong competition? I have 5 reasons. 5 reasons why James Coburn was victorious. So the number one reason James Coburn won was that he was the veteran in the category who had never won an Oscar before. He was one of those character actors who most people had taken for granted all of those decades. Like going back to the 50s and 60s, he's in some classic films. He's in Our Man Flint. He's in The Magnificent Seven. In the 70s, he's working with Sergio Leone in films like Duck You Sucker and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Like, he's working with good directors, he's appearing in some wonderful films, but he's never really taken seriously as a great actor, someone who can get in at the Oscars, could be nominated, who could win. And in the 90s, he's not really in much. His comeback role really is Affliction, and he said at one point that Paul Schrader asked him if he could act in this movie. Like, really bring it. Don't just show up on day one and play the character just like James Coburn would. Like, he wanted him to invent a character, immerse himself in it, get lost in this awful, alcoholic, abusive father character, and disappear in a way that after a while you do forget you're watching James Coburn. He's able to do that in Affliction, And so because he was a legend at that point, certainly overdue, had never won, had never been nominated before for an Oscar, him being a veteran in the category definitely helped. I mean, you could argue Robert Duvall was also a veteran in the category, but he had an Oscar. He won in Best Actor in the 80s for Tender Mercies, so he had one. James Coburn did not have one yet, so that might have tipped the scales toward Coburn a little bit. Reason number 2 is that it's a very big, flashy performance that's also a physical transformation. James Coburn in Affliction ages over many decades. There are some flashback moments where he's much younger, has dark hair, he's being terrible to his young wife, his little kids. There's at least 3 or 4 scenes where he's mouthing off at them, where he's hitting a kid like down to the ground, just being like the worst father in the world. He looks believable younger, and then he's also believable when he ages up a lot. Like now he has the gray hair. Now he's walking much slower, doesn't have a physical presence like he does in the flashbacks. It doesn't even look like the same person in a way. I mean, you believe it's the same guy, but he looks 30 to 40 years older, and that's also really effective in the movie. So going beyond the bigness of his performance, the flashiness, like there's 5 or 6 scenes where he's just screaming and being physical, and you are just terrified by this guy, what he might do next. And even though he has slowed down in his older age, you understand he is still this threatening, haunting presence over his adult son, played by Nick Nolte. So the power of the performance matched with the physical transformation of everything Coburn does throughout that film also helped get him to an Oscar win. The third reason is that Nick Nolte got in pretty much everywhere in Best Actor, including the Oscars. He was also nominated there for Affliction. If James Coburn had been the only nominee for that movie at the Oscars, I don't think he wins. I think you also have to have Nolte there in Best Actor as well. And it's interesting to look back and see how most of the people in supporting actor that year did not have a leading actor to go along for the ride. Only Jeffrey Rush had that in Best Actress with Gwyneth Paltrow. Robert Duvall did not have that in a civil action. John Travolta is not nominated in Best Actor. Billy Bob Thornton, no one else from that movie is nominated, including Bill Paxton in Best Actor. He is not in. And shockingly, of course, still shockingly, I think to this day, Jim Carrey was not Oscar nominated in Best Actor for The Truman Show. So I do think that would have helped Ed Harris as well. Like, Ed Harris gets into supporting actor, the movie's also in director and screenplay, but I do think Jim Carrey getting into actor, that would have helped Harris in the long run. James Coburn did have his co-star in at the Oscars in Best Actor, Nick Nolte. So that was also a reason Coburn won. The fourth reason, this is another big one, every other person in the category had at least one mark against them, usually 2 or 3. Let's start with Billy Bob Thornton, who I do think him having won just 2 years prior in screenplay for Sling Blade, that did not help his chances. A Simple Plan does not do well at the Oscars. The only other category it's in is adapted screenplay, Scott Smith. A Simple Plan is not in picture or director or technical categories, only screenplay. So that also didn't help him, and Critics' Choice at the end of the 90s, they didn't have much influence then, they were just starting out, so I think him winning that prize at the end of the 90s, like, that didn't really help his chances. I think the only thing that helped him with was getting the nomination at the Oscars, getting him in, which I'm so happy he did, because again, that is my favorite performance here in the category. I'm so thrilled that Thornton at least got the nomination, that's there for all time. But I do think the prospects of him winning the Oscar for A Simple Plan, like, weren't great. I would have him near the bottom of the list. Robert Duvall for A Civil Action, he also had a couple marks against him. He had won already. If he had never won before, at the end of the 90s, he still doesn't have one, and he wins at SAG for A Civil Action, I think he might have pulled it off. That he had already won in Best Actor before did not help his chances, and A Civil Action only getting into cinematography outside of supporting actor. Like not Best Actor for Travolta, not Picture Director, not even Screenplay for a Civil Action. That also hurt him. I think the two big marks against Geoffrey Rush, one is that movie, Shakespeare in Love, was already taken care of, right? It's winning picture, actress, supporting actress. It didn't also need to win supporting actor. That might have been looked at by many as overkill. And I think the even bigger thing is that he just won Best Actor at the Oscars 2 years prior for Shine. It's like, he just won in Best Actor. Do we have to give him a supporting actor prize 2 years later? I think if Rush had not won for Shine, let's say Tom Cruise had won that Oscar in Best Actor for Jerry Maguire, let's say at the end of that award season 1996, Rush is the favorite to win Best Actor for Shine, but he doesn't win at the end of the day. It goes to Cruise or maybe Ralph Fiennes for The English Patient or something. Then I think Rush maybe wins for Shakespeare in Love and supporting actor 2 years later. Especially because the film wins Best Picture. You know, it wins picture. None of these other four contenders are even in a Best Picture nominee. So I do think that was a leg up for Geoffrey Rush, that he's in the Best Picture winner. If he hadn't won already for Shine just 2 years prior, maybe he could have pulled it off. And then you have Ed Harris for The Truman Show. I do think he was in second place. He had not won yet. He still hasn't won to this day, right? He was on his second nomination. I do think he came semi-close to winning the Oscar that first time around, and now he's nominated for The Truman Show, which isn't Best Director. It's in Screenplay. Like, it didn't do as well as I hoped at the Oscars, but it has 3 key nominations. Best Director for Peter Weir, of course, a big one. So it seemed like if we're going to give The Truman Show something on Oscars night, Best Supporting Actor for Ed Harris made sense, even though he only won the Golden Globe. It seemed possible. I mean, a couple strikes against him is that The Truman Show really did fade a lot that award season. It started strong at the Globes in January. By March, there's not a ton of passion for that film. You can tell by it not getting into picture or actor for Jim Carrey. There's also not a physical transformation for Harris in that film. You watch The Truman Show, and even though he very much becomes that character, he basically just looks like himself, so that didn't help. Also, The Truman Show came out in June. It came out way back in June of 1998, and especially in that era when the Oscars were always like late March of the following year, having your movie come out earlier, like, it doesn't help you. It never did really, like outside of the occasional anomaly, like a Silence of the Lambs or something. Like if The Truman Show had opened in November or December of 98, I do think Jim Carrey gets in. I think maybe it gets into picture. I think because it came out way back in early June. That also hurt Ed Harris's chances, and that brings me to reason number 5 why James Coburn won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, the release dates for his movie, Affliction. That film came on strong at just the right time during Oscars voting for the nominations, for the wins. Affliction does not open in limited release until the very end of December, December 30th. And then it doesn't go wide until after Oscar nominations are announced in mid-February of 1999. That's when most of the country gets to see Affliction for the first time after Nick Nolte and James Coburn are nominated for Oscars. That's when a lot of people are discovering Affliction, lifting it up, giving it some word of mouth. And I think like that movie coming on when it did, right around the time Academy members are casting their final ballots in a category that was very chaotic, right? Best Supporting Actor from January to March is extremely chaotic. Affliction came on strong at just the right time. Enough Academy members looked at that film, looked at the Coburn performance, and said, I am voting for him. And remember, James Coburn didn't have to win by a lot. He could have won like with 22% of the final votes. I don't think he won by like 70%. It was probably a small amount, and it was just enough to get him to a victory.
For my beautiful wife, Paula, she finally got to come to the Academy Awards. This is for you, baby.
In a career that spanned decades, James Coburn got to have his moments, his big moments, at the 71st Academy Awards, and then he passed away just 3 years later in 2002. He didn't get to have like a huge boost to his career. There wasn't time, sadly, but thank God he got to win an Academy Award. Thank God he had this incredible moment. And looking back on that category, even though my preference is Billy Bob Thornton in A Simple Plan or Ed Harris in one of my favorite films of all time, The Truman Show, Ed Harris still has never won, which is crazy. After 4 nominations, I do think him winning for The Truman Show would have been deserved. James Coburn is phenomenal in Affliction. What a great performance. What a physical transformation and emotional transformation. It's the best work of his entire career. So if he was ever going to win an Oscar, a victory in Best Supporting Actor for Affliction makes total sense. So that's the story of the totally crazy Best Supporting Actor race of 1998. We rarely get an acting race like that one. Usually, there's someone who wins 2 prizes along the way, or 3, or more, right? Sometimes we get to Oscars night, and there is a race between 2 people, or maybe even 3, but rarely do we have a race like Supporting Actor 1998, where any one of those 5 people in the category could have won. And I don't know about you, I live for that kind of chaos at the Oscars. Because it rarely happens, I love it. I look for it. And so thank God, just 2 years later in Best Supporting Actress, we had a race just as chaotic, just as suspenseful, unpredictable, when Marcia Gay Harden took the prize for Pollock. That is another race worth exploring on the awards contender, and that video is coming very soon. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below, what do you think of James Coburn's Oscar win for Affliction, and what do you think of this totally crazy supporting actor race of 1998? I'll see you next time at the awards contender.